Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome to Finding Me in the ITV networks. As women, we're always struggling. We're struggling with our figures, we're struggling with the foods we eat, we're struggling with our pregnancies, or later on we're struggling with how to return to our normal weights after we've given birth. But of course, the big question for many women is about fasting whilst pregnant, about nutrition, and of course the well-being of the infant or the unborn child. Basically, one has to consider the very many challenges that women have or women face, and in that, food is perhaps one of the biggest challenges today. As it can be said, the food you eat can be either the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So to discuss these issues and the very many challenges that women face, and of course in dealing with their infants or with the unborn, I have with me today a third-year dietetic student, final-year dietetic student actually. It's Imaan Mookadam, and Imaan has written various columns in certain newspapers advising about nutrition, etc. So with that, I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you for being here, Imaan.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's nice to be back on your show.
I'm glad. Tell me, Imaan, food is always a challenge for a woman. It's a challenge for a young and old woman. Basically, today we're in a climate or in a context where how you look is very important, how you represent yourself is very, very important, and also ultimately there are other considerations, and that is if for pregnant women, if they are pregnant, and the importance of the unborn.
The first rule of food is where you eat it and how you eat it. So one should actually consider that you should be sitting at a table, relaxed, preferably with family, so that you can concentrate on your food. You should be taking each bite, let it digest nice and slowly. Because I mean, if you take something on the go, you might take too little. If you just grab an apple and go, or grab a packet of chips and go, or alternatively, you could be taking too much and then you never stop until the end of the day. The other important thing is that if one eats in front of the TV, your mind is actually focused on the TV and you're not concentrating how much you eat. So that too, you could just be eating and eating away.
Okay, so it's about the where of the food, the how of the food, and also the content of the food. I suppose that all contributes.
It's also how much you eat. So you should be focusing on every bite. You should let your stomach tell you when it's full and not overfill yourself. You should just eat enough to take away your hunger, basically.
And I suppose by watching television, you're distracted. So the signals between the brain and the food and the stomach, etc., probably gets, I'm not a scientist, but I would figure out that it probably gets miswired or something like that, and that's why you continue to eat, or you're misled into believing that you still need more food.
Definitely, because most of the adverts on TV are in actual fact it's of McDonald's or Burger King or Roman's Pizza, and then suddenly you're hungry all over again.
That's right, so it contributes to that. Tell me, why is food so important then?
Food is a nourishment for your soul as well as for your body. It's something that you need to go about your daily routine and to function effectively. So, and food also becomes it shows your identity. It's because you are what you eat. So I mean, if you eat a hamburger, chances are you're going to be a hamburger. And if you eat vegetables, it will show, because what you put inside is what comes out on the outside.
So ultimately, people perceive you from the external, but the external is very much influenced by what goes
inside,
and the internal. So basically, if you're looking at women, a pregnant woman, basically, and they have to consider themselves, their own nutrition, their own nourishment, but then there's an external factor to consider now, and that is, of course, the unborn fetus, which she's carrying. Why is nutrition then so important for a pregnant mother?
No, they say the fetus is the ultimate parasite. So if you're not feeding your fetus, the fetus is going to feed off you, which is true. That's it. I mean, science has shown that a lot of women who don't consume enough nutrients, for example, calcium, the baby actually starts sucking up your calcium from your teeth and your bones, and then you've never had a cavity in your life, but suddenly you've got all these cavities, and then your bones are sore. It's all because the baby needs what the baby needs, and you can't tell that baby, look, hold on, I'll feed you later. So you have to listen to your body and feed yourself and feed your baby. I'm not saying that you should be eating for two, because then at the end of the day you're going to be losing that weight for two, which is very, very difficult.
You're going to have to try to lose that weight.
You're going to have to try to lose the weight for two. It
Yes.
might just stay and then become weight for 3, 4, 5 at the end of the day. So women have to eat carefully, but it's not that they should overeat. It's especially the start of the pregnancy, you're looking at 300 extra calories per day in the first trimester, and that's simply maybe like a whole wheat bagel with a slice of cheese on it. That's it, or a bran
for
muffin.
The whole day.
That's all extra that you're supposed to be eating for the day.
Wow.
The interesting part is that your water content or your fluid content should be increasing to accommodate the expanding blood volume. So instead of 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day, you're looking at 2 to 2.5 liters per water per day. That's the big change.
So the intake should be more on the liquids and less on the solids.
Less on the food.
Okay, so we have to go to a break. When we come back, I want to ask you about the most important or the most nutritious foods during pregnancy that a woman can possibly engage with or perhaps, use to help her get through this difficult phase. So we'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the second segment of Finding Me in the ITV networks, today with Imaan Mookadam. And before we went on to the break, Imaan explained that the fetus is the ultimate parasite. And as a mother, I could just think about that particular expression and that metaphor. And in my mind thinking, gosh, but they continue to be parasites in many ways. I think of the children who cling and who nag, and it's like, God, are you ever going to give me a break? But of course, they're the most beautiful, amazing individuals. Now, let's come back to this whole concept of nutritious food. What are the most nutritious foods during pregnancy? Because as a woman, in developing myself, my perception, my identity, I have a particular vision and a particular image in mind. And of course, it not only shapes me, but it shapes also the child that I'm carrying inside of me. So I have to consider both, because I'm developing myself and I'm developing the unborn fetus. And if I want something positive, something good, then what would you recommend?
It's very important that in pregnancy as well as out of pregnancy that you should concentrate on eating foods from all the different food groups. Your food groups is your carbohydrates, you're looking at your fats with your sweets and your oils, and then you're looking at your proteins as well as your meat, fish, egg, beans, lentils.
Okay, just wait a second. So did you say sweets also?
Sweets can be included.
So we can have sweets.
It's okay to indulge, and during pregnancy, if you crave something, chances are that's what the baby needs. So if you're craving a chocolate, eat the chocolate. Don't eat the entire chocolate, not the whole slab, like have a block or two, because there's something in that chocolate that the baby requires. If you have craving for junk food the whole day, then there's something wrong with you and not what the baby's requiring. That's
because that parasite is a good parasite.
It's a good parasite. They don't know what's junk food. They're not looking for the fast and easy foods. They want something to help them grow. And so you're looking at things, if you should focus on the whole wheat, the whole grains, instead of like your sugary cereals in the morning. Think of oats or cornflakes. Those kind of things that are the least processed is better for you and better for the baby. And anything that's minimally processed will keep you fuller for longer, so you can last from breakfast until lunch and not have breakfast and lunch, or breakfast, lunch. So then after your cereals, the next most important group, now you need protein. Protein is important for the baby to grow, especially in the second and third trimester. And a lot of women will turn up their nose at the sound of meat or fish or something during the first trimester, which is fine. You can get creative. If you can't have your proteins for breakfast,
so talking about fish being the favorite food during pregnancy, I feel sorry for that man whose wife has a craving for prawns or oysters during Ramadan. Can you imagine his food bill?
Never mind that. That also brings on early labor, especially in the third trimester. Is fish. It's fish. Okay. But fish, the good part about fish is that it has high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is excellent for developing brain. So you're giving your child lots of brain food through that fish. But if you're eating prawns, you're giving yourself high cholesterol at the same time. So there's good and there's bad. You can help yourself or you can help the baby. Think about it. Okay. And then there's other proteins that lots of the times we forget. It's all your lentils, your beans, your chickpeas. I mean, that's not stuff that usually makes you nauseous. And the nausea usually lasts only through the first trimester. In the second trimester, you're hungry for food. And that's where you should focus on your proteins. And then the water. Water is very, very important. In the very beginning, it will prevent constipation, your bladder infections, urinary tract infection, and it carries you right through to the end where it will prevent dehydration. And I mean, if you've got dehydration in your third trimester, what happens is that it causes your uterus to contract and it brings on early labor.
And I suppose if you've eaten properly throughout the day, then you're not going to eat so much sugar anyway, isn't it?
Exactly. If you're nourishing your body, the cardinal rule basically for anybody, not if you're pregnant, is 3 small meals with 3 small snacks in between for the day. And I mean, a meal is counted like your cereal for breakfast, maybe a yogurt at 10 o'clock, and then you have your lunch, and you can have a fruit at 3 o'clock, and then you have your dinner and a glass of milk before going to bed.
So that's the 6 across.
That's your 6 meals for the day.
I think a lot of people eat more than that.
I think so too, because I mean, every time you eat a packet of chips, it's a meal.
It's a meal?
It's a meal. It's a full meal.
You're talking about a Simba crisp?
A Simba crisp.
Oh my word. Okay, so, let's look at Ramadan now. We're coming into Ramadan, and pregnant women have to deal with this whole concept of fasting. And even a non-pregnant woman have to deal with the whole concept of fasting. So how does the first 3 days of fasting actually contribute to your well-being?
The first 3 days becomes a detox, because this is the time where you're not eating as much food. I mean, the most food you can put in yourself in Ramadan, we count it usually as 2 meals and a snack, because your 2 meals will be your sehri and your iftar, and then your snack is probably late night after Tarawih. You want something, but you're not going to eat a full meal. So in this case is where you're detoxing yourself from 6 meals now down to 3. And to enhance this detox, you should drink lots of water and lots of fruits and vegetables. So you're cleansing your body. And after the 3rd day, fasting generally becomes easier.
Okay, but I have one question. I hear a lot of people say we put on weight during Ramadan. And how does that happen?
It's very simple. Out of Ramadan, you're not having that lavish iftar where you have pies, samosas, milkshake plus soup and a full meal, and then there's dessert at the end too. That's not what you have on every single day. So we should actually try and stay away from those lavish and oversweet iftars basically.
Okay, and cut down, drink more waters, etc.
Lots of water.
And be active, make tarawih, I suppose.
Yes, that's because I'm not asking you to go to the gym while you're fasting.
That's right. Okay, so now, well, if you consider all of this then, there is the whole understanding of the born now. We're talking about the newly born child and breastfeeding. There are very many different options, and women don't really know which option they should go for. I think there's a tremendous amount of ignorance amongst women, generally in terms of breastfeeding versus formula, etc. And I mean, you see that a lot in the clinics when you go and visit, to the hospitals, amongst the poorer populations also, who are battling to balance between breastfeeding and formula. What would you recommend?
It's my opinion that breastfeeding is always best. And I mean, our country, our government has actually gone through the breast is best opinion now. That's what they market. They're no longer giving formula as handouts at the clinic unless a medical reason is obviously given that a woman can't breastfeed. And I mean, this is the only situation where formula should actually be considered is, for example, if a woman doesn't have enough milk, she cannot produce enough milk. This happens, and then there's other situations where a mother could pass away during childbirth, and then there's nobody to obviously give the baby breast milk. And the third reason is where you have a medical condition, usually a heart condition, prevents a person from breastfeeding because it's bad for your heart. It could actually kill you.
Okay, I have to stop you there. We really don't want to die right now, so we're going for a break. When we come back, we're going to take this discussion further. See you then. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, and welcome to the final segment of Finding Me in the ITV networks, today with Imaan Mookadam. And before we went on to the break, Imaan kind of threatened us to tell us that if we're not careful what we're going to eat, we're going to have heart attacks. And so there's this quote that I found, Imaan. It says, "You are what you eat, so don't let it be fake, easy or fast." And so we have to be careful about these particular notions. Now, coming back to this whole concept of, providing for yourself and providing for your child. What do you feel, and we were speaking about breastfeeding versus formula, and in the case of women who cannot breastfeed, then of course they have formulas. And you mentioned that the government has undertaken a campaign to say breast is best. My question is for the wealthier women who do not go to government hospitals, so go to private hospitals, private clinics, etc. Do they carry the same ethos?
Yes, they do carry the same ethos, and I mean on every single formula tin, it has to be written that breast is best. Okay. So although you've got that formula, you must remember that breast is best. And I mean, usually nowadays I see a lot of what's happening is that the media is brainwashing our women, making them think that it's more convenient to formula feed. But how is it more convenient when breast milk is 100% free and your breast milk is individualized for your baby's needs? If your baby needs a little bit more iron, your breast milk has that little bit more iron, while the formula doesn't. Formula is a general formula given to numerous babies. And breast milk has so many benefits, not just for the baby, but for mum as well. Some of the benefits for mum include that it helps your uterus to get back into its original position that it was before delivery of the baby. It also helps you lose weight so that you can get back to that pre-pregnancy weight faster. I mean, think about it. While your little one is feeding, you're actually burning calories. Yeah. I mean, that should be reason enough to feed the baby. And another thing also is that it's the special bond that is created between mother and baby while you're feeding. The baby can feel the warmth of your skin and the baby can hear your heartbeat, and those are sounds and the senses that your baby is used to for feeling that in your womb for 9 months. And then for the baby, your breast milk, you start off at the colostrum, which is thickened like a paste, which helps promote that first bowel movement so the baby passes the first stool. And once that stool passes, the risk of jaundice is gone. So that's one thing. Then through every feed, the breast milk consistency is different. I mean, this itself is miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you start off the milk being watery to quench the baby's thirst, and then the milk starts getting thick, and this is the milk that's loaded with fat to satisfy your baby. And that's usually why the little infant falls asleep on the breast and then just gives out a little sigh once he's done. And he lets you know when he's done as well. And then other benefits for the baby is that that suckling from the breast instead of a bottle promotes your jaw development and your teeth development. And babies who are breastfed have shown to have better speech. They've also shown to have greater intelligence than formula-fed babies. So, I mean, if you want the best for your baby, breast is best.
Breast is best, and of course I think it's about putting the needs of your infant above your own ego or selfish demands, I suppose. And that's why it's important that when women choose, or let me rather put it this way, when couples choose to have children, then they should choose to make time for those children, isn't it? Because breastfeeding also requires time.
It requires time, and that's the only thing that you're going to pay for your breastfeeding is time with your little infant, whereas formula actually costs money, and a lot of money if you think about it, because you go through about 8 to 10 bottles a day.
But besides costing you time, I think there's a greater cost involved, and that is that you lose that particular bond that you have with your child,
baby, and
the growth and the development and all of the additional benefits that you just spoke about. So let's come to another aspect now. We've looked at pre-birth. You looked at breastfeeding versus formula, etc. There's another challenge that are facing many young people today, especially the youth. And I think women as well, in different age categories, and that is the modern demands, which brings on different eating disorders, anorexia, obesity, etc. Can you comment a little bit about that?
Society shows us pictures of these actors, actresses, the models. They have these bodies, they're either extremely thin, or in the case of the actors, they're very buff. I mean, you see the six-pack, you see those muscles, and our youth want to be like that because this is what media tells us, is that you should look like that. But the truth of the matter is, without all that tweaking of technology, without all that additional camera enhancing and all the makeup and the airbrushing, the average boy or girl does not look like that. That same actor and actress does not look like that, because that is not a healthy body. I mean, what part of visible rib cages or visible bones is healthy? So that's not, if you're skinny is not healthy, fit is actually being healthy. So this is where eating disorders come in, is where a girl or even boys, they see these bodies, they want to look like that, they feel the need to look like that to sort of enhance their self-esteem, and then they resort to, for the girls, it's eating disorders. They become introverted, they don't want to sit at the table and eat with family, because although we love mommy's food, mommy cooks with a lot of ghee and butter, and that's not good for me, because then I'm not going to look like that actor or actress that I want to look look like. So then it doesn't just affect them and their bodies, it actually affects their whole social life. So then they become introverted, they want to sit on their own, and then if somebody starts noticing that they're skipping meals, they'll come eat that meal and then afterwards go to the bathroom. And the scary point of this is that they make themselves throw up to lose that food and losing all the nutrients with it as well. So they're punishing their bodies. And in the case with boys, they look at the protein shakes, and if the shake says if you take 2 shakes per day you'll put on so much muscle in this period of time, so they think by taking 4 shakes per day they'll shorten the time halfway. But the truth of the matter is, and it's written on those formula bottles, that too much of the urea and creatinine that's found in this causes kidney damage. So we find many young people with failing kidneys, then they need to be on dialysis. So the youth are spending more of their time in hospital and in rehab than with their loved ones. So they're ruining their life to conform to these norms of society, basically.
The norms, I suppose, that are created by particular images that are usually fake and enhanced.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tremendous challenge in the psyche of any individual, I suppose. And,
Yes.
and that's also maybe because people don't have self-confidence today.
People don't have self-confidence today.
And they don't know how to develop their own identities and to be comfortable with who they are. But most importantly, as you were speaking, I thought about the prophetic wisdom, and that is balance in everything. So you can eat, I suppose, almost everything. As you said, you need to eat from all the food groups, but there must be balance in how you manage that food, isn't it?
That is true. You have to balance everything. And this is the time where we should consider about our Prophet ﷺ. We usually want to follow his sunnah in every way, but we forget that he's given us guidance when it comes to eating and your mannerisms of eating as well. Nabi ﷺ always only ate 1/3 of his stomach was for food, 1/3 was for water, and the 1/3 was for air. And nowadays when you feel, after you've eaten, you feel like you can't even breathe anymore, because that's how much we actually eat. So we should look to Nabi ﷺ for our guidance for how much to eat, what to eat. It also mentions in some hadith that his favorite foods were dates, milk, mutton and oats, mutton being lamb basically, and oats. And we should look at the Quran, the foods that they mention, fruits and vegetables, specifically to olives and onions and cucumber and pomegranate and figs and dates. These are the good fruits and vegetables that one should be eating. The Quran also makes mention of barley as well as oats and also lentils. So these are the healthy foods. If you make a diet out of these mentioned foods, you won't have any problem with overweight, you won't have any problem with obesity, and you definitely won't feel the need to be anorexic, because you will have a good healthy body, inshallah.
And I suppose you won't have many health problems either, eh?
Yes, and if we look at Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's example, we won't be facing these problems that, eating problems that arise from improper diet is the biggest problems nowadays. It's not diseases that you can catch, like contagious diseases, basically. Looking at your heart diseases, some forms of cancers, what we call non-communicable diseases.
As you were speaking, I thought about also, you said eat that which is good, and that's what the Quran tells you all the time, halal and tayyib. Not only halal, but halal and tayyib. So that which is halal and that which is good also with the halal. So you have to be careful of the choices that you make.
This is true.
Okay, so now we're in the final segment of this particular interview, and I want you to just elaborate a little bit about what are the challenges facing young South African poorer women, the women from the poorer communities, because as dietetic students, etc., you usually go out into the rural communities, into the rural hospitals, and you see very many things that you probably won't find in the private hospitals or private clinics.
We do see a lot of these economically disadvantaged younger women, and in my opinion, sometimes they may have a greater advantage over us than a disadvantage, because we have these distractions of Wi-Fi and television and fashion, how we look, what we wear, what we're going to do over the weekend, whereas they have something we don't, and that is ambition, drive and gumption. They want to get somewhere in life. So in this case, there's a lot of them that have a greater advantage over us, where they focus on, in simple terms, they know how to say Alhamdulillah and be content with what they have. They're happy, where we're always chasing something more. And so I think for them, this is their greater advantage over us. Whereas we sometimes, the disadvantage looking at, we have better access to better schools, textbooks, even food. They sometimes don't have access to food, and it's proven that you can't educate a hungry child. So they suffer in that sense, where they cannot be educated, they don't have access to these fantastic textbooks. works, but nothing stops them. They still strive, and they want something that's the best. They want to get out from sort of the rut that they feel that they're in. So they work harder, twice as hard as us, I would think, and they usually put the effort that goes into their work is more quality rather than quantity, whereas we put in quantity rather than quality. And then they also have the issue of a lot of them, we see they have low self-esteem, because if they look at their peers of the same age and obviously the same gender in the upper and middle class, they feel inferior because they may have a lack of, let's say, sanitation and hygiene and the way they dress. So if they look at these their counterparts, sort of, they feel inferior and they have this low self-esteem, and they feel like these people are better than me, and like, why do these people have so much and why do I have so little? And in this sense, then they look for attention and they find it in the wrong places, because it's sadly that these children and these youth, they turn to drugs and they turn to like prostitution, because a little attention from the wrong person actually becomes self-destructive to them. And but they just crave this attention as any youth would.
Okay, so as a parting advice, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say to all the youth, not just women out there, that you should strive and be content with what you have. Strive for the best, but it doesn't mean that you've got to trample over people along the way to get to the best. And just have your ambition, have your dreams, and work towards it. And remember that always make your parents happy, because their du'as is what will get you to where you want to be.
And considering that, I want to leave the viewers with this particular comment. It says, eat less sugar, you're sweet enough already. So that should be enough to give you sufficient self-confidence, and I think that's ultimately where it all lies, isn't it, or where it all begins.
That's true.
Okay, so with that, thank you very much for being here and for sharing this wonderful day with us. Fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.